What happens when two broken souls collide in the shadows of deception? This isn't your typical love story. It's a dark, twisted tale of revenge, redemption, and the dangerous game of trust. The blood on Emma Chen's hands had long since dried, but she could still feel its phantom warmth as she adjusted her crooked glasses in the elevator mirror. 42 floors above San Francisco's financial district, she was about to meet the man who had destroyed her family, the man who had no idea who she really was. The Sterling Tower's marble lobby gleamed under morning sunlight, reflecting a woman the world had taught to disappear. Her worn navy dress and practical ponytail were calculated choices, a disguise perfected over 7 years of patient planning. Every threadbare detail screamed harmless accountant, while beneath the surface, something far more dangerous waited. "This is Emma Chen from Morrison & Associates," the attorney announced as she entered the boardroom where Nathaniel Hayes commanded attention in his sharp gray suit. "She'll be handling the review." Nathaniel barely glanced up from his phone, dismissing her with the casual cruelty of the powerful. Another faceless employee, someone whose name he would forget before lunch. Perfect. Emma settled at the conference table's far end, spreading her papers with methodical precision. Her fingers moved across the calculator with practiced speed. But her mind was elsewhere, cataloging every detail of the man who had once been David Morrison's business partner. The man who had stolen her father's company, driven him to bankruptcy, and ultimately to the pills that had stopped his heart 3 years ago. "The error is in Section 12, subsection 4, she said after 20 minutes, her voice soft but steady. Someone transposed the quarterly projections with the annual forecasts. The actual figures show a 15% increase in profitability, not the 7% listed here. The room fell silent. For the first time, Nathaniel looked up from his phone, studying the woman who had just saved his company millions. His gray eyes met hers briefly, and Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Those were the same eyes that had stared coldly at her father during their final meeting, showing no mercy as David Morrison begged for more time. "Are you certain?" Nathaniel asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone unaccustomed to being questioned. Emma nodded, sliding the corrected report across the polished table. "I've double-checked everything." The original calculations were based on outdated market projections. As Nathaniel reviewed her work, Emma allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Phase 1 was complete. She had gained access to Hayes Technologies' inner circle just as she had planned, the brilliant, overlooked accountant who could spot errors others missed. Soon she would be indispensable. "Excellent work," Nathaniel said, and Emma detected genuine surprise in his tone. "What's your background?" "Mathematics and finance from Berkeley, plus 7 years in corporate accounting," she replied, gathering her papers. The same Berkeley, where her father had once been a promising professor before Nathaniel Hayes had lured him into business with promises of fortune. "I specialize in merger and acquisition reviews." Now something flickered in Nathaniel's expression, a shadow of recognition. That made Emma's pulse quicken. Did he remember the name Chen? Remember David Chen, the brilliant mathematician who had created the algorithm that built Hayes Technologies' fortune before being discarded like yesterday's news? Before he could pursue the thought, his assistant appeared. "Sir, you have the Riverside Foundation board meeting in an hour." The business day resumed its relentless pace, and Emma slipped away as quietly as she had arrived. But she carried with her the weight of Nathaniel's lingering gaze and the dangerous certainty that her carefully constructed identity might not be as secure as she had believed. That evening, as Emma prepared for the charity gala where she would take the next step in her plan, she stared at her reflection in her small Oakland apartment's cracked mirror. The girl who had once believed in justice and fairy tales was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone willing to use any weapon at her disposal, even if that weapon was her own heart. The St. Francis Hotel ballroom sparkled with wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers casting dancing shadows across marble floors, where San Francisco's elite gathered for another night of orchestrated charity. Emma moved through the crowd like a ghost, her 3-year-old black dress a stark contrast to the designer gowns that cost more than most people's cars. She had chosen her seat carefully, close enough to observe Nathaniel Hayes, but far enough to remain invisible. From her table near the back, she watched him work the room with practiced ease, his black tuxedo fitting like armor crafted by Italian masters. Every gesture spoke of old money and older power, though Emma knew the truth. He had clawed his way up from nothing, just like her father had tried to do. The difference was that Nathaniel had been willing to destroy others to reach the top. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced, "we're pleased to present our keynote speaker, Nathaniel Hayes, founder and CEO of Hayes Technologies." Emma's hands clenched in her lap as Nathaniel approached the podium. This was the moment she had been waiting for, her chance to study him unguarded, to search for weaknesses in his perfect facade. Technology is only as powerful as the minds that wield it, Nathaniel concluded his polished speech about giving back and creating opportunities. "Tonight, we have the opportunity to ensure that talent is never limited by circumstances." The applause was thunderous, but Emma barely heard it. Her attention was fixed on Nathaniel's face as he mentioned children from low-income families. The subtle weight in his voice that suggested personal experience. When he described the hunger for knowledge that drove young minds, his eyes held a distant memory that seemed almost vulnerable. For a moment, Emma felt something crack in the wall of hatred she had built around her heart. Then she remembered her father's funeral, the empty church, the bills that had kept coming even after David Chen was gone, and the crack sealed itself. "Excuse me, aren't you the accountant from this morning's meeting?" Emma looked up to find Nathaniel Hayes standing beside her chair, his expression curious rather than dismissive. Several nearby conversations quieted as people recognized the billionaire's presence. "Yes, I'm Emma Chen," she replied, standing with calculated politeness. "Your presentation was very compelling. Thank you. I have to admit, I'm curious about something. Your analysis this morning was remarkably thorough. Most people would have missed those calculation errors entirely." Emma felt the attention of the entire table focused on their conversation. This was her chance, the opening she had orchestrated. "I have a talent for patterns," she said simply. "Numbers tell stories when you know how to read them." Nathaniel's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's an interesting way to put it. Would you care to elaborate?" "Financial statements are like archaeological records," Emma explained, warming to her subject despite the audience. "Each line item represents a decision, a priority, a moment in time. When you understand the narrative, errors become obvious, because they break the logical flow." "Fascinating. And what story did our merger documents tell you?" Emma hesitated, aware that her honest assessment might not be what he wanted to hear. But honesty was part of her strategy, the foundation of the trust she needed to build. "Your company values innovation over tradition, but you're acquiring firms with established market presence to gain credibility with conservative investors. It's a brilliant strategy, actually." The table had gone completely silent. Emma realized she had just offered unsolicited strategic analysis to one of the most powerful men in Silicon Valley. But Nathaniel was smiling, the first genuine expression she had seen from him all evening. "You're absolutely right. That's exactly what we're doing." As the charity auction began, Emma found herself drawn into conversation with the man she had sworn to destroy. He was intelligent, charismatic, and surprisingly thoughtful. When he criticized the inefficiency of charity galas compared to direct intervention, she felt an unwelcome flutter of agreement. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to hate him, to see him as nothing more than the monster who had destroyed her family. Instead, she was beginning to glimpse the complex man beneath the polished exterior, and it terrified her. "Miss Chen," Nathaniel called as the evening wound down and Emma prepared to leave. "I hope you'll consider something. We're always looking for talented financial analysts at Hayes Technologies. Someone with your skills and perspective could make a real difference." Emma stared at him, her carefully rehearsed responses failing her. "I'm sorry, what?" "A job offer. If you're interested, have your resume sent to my office. We should discuss this properly." As Nathaniel disappeared into the crowd, Emma stood frozen beside her table. The business card he had pressed into her hand felt like both a weapon and a trap. Phase 2 of her plan was complete, but something had changed. The enemy she had expected to face was more dangerous than she had imagined. Not because he was a monster, but because he wasn't. And that made what she planned to do to him infinitely more complicated. 3 weeks into her new position at Hayes Technologies, Emma Chen had become everything she had pretended to be. The brilliant analyst who could spot patterns others missed. The quiet professional who stayed late and asked insightful questions. The invaluable team member who made everyone around her look better. She also had access to Nathaniel's private files. The 37th floor hummed with late evening activity as Emma worked alone in the strategic planning department. Her colleagues had long since gone home to their families, but Emma had volunteered to stay behind and finish the quarterly projections. What they didn't know was that she had already completed the reports hours ago. Now, she sat in front of her computer, fingers trembling slightly as she navigated through the executive server directories. She had gained access to, through careful observation and patient password harvesting, 3 weeks of watching Nathaniel type his credentials, of noting his security habits, positioning herself to see screen reflections in windows and picture frames. The Chen Morrison partnership folder appeared on her screen like a ghost from her past. Emma's breath caught as she opened files she had never seen before. Legal documents, financial records, email chains dating back 8 years. The story they told was more complex than she had ever imagined. Her father hadn't just been Nathaniel's business partner. He had been his mentor, his friend, the brilliant mathematician who had taken a promising but reckless young entrepreneur under his wing. The early emails revealed a relationship built on mutual respect and shared vision. Nathaniel's messages to David Chen were filled with gratitude, excitement, and something that looked remarkably like hero worship. Then came the algorithm. Emma stared at the technical specifications her father had developed. The revolutionary predictive modeling system that had become the foundation of Hayes Technologies' success. According to the documents, David Chen had willingly signed over the rights, accepting a smaller partnership stake in exchange for Nathaniel's promise to handle the business side. While David focused on research, the partnership had thrived for 2 years. Then came the cancer diagnosis. Emma's hand shook as she read her father's email explaining his illness. His need to step back from active involvement, his trust that Nathaniel would continue to honor their agreement. A response was swift and brutal. A legal notice terminating the partnership, citing David's inability to fulfill his obligations. A buyout offer that was technically legal but morally devastating, taking advantage of David's desperate need for medical care money. But it was the final email that shattered Emma's understanding of everything she thought she knew. I thought you... No, I have no choice. The investors are demanding changes, and they won't work with a partner who can't contribute full-time. I'm sorry it has to be this way, but I'm trying to save what we built. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Promise. Nathaniel, her father's response was a single line, I trusted you like a son. I hope the guilt follows you forever. Emma leaned back in her chair, her worldview crumbling around her. Nathaniel hadn't been the calculating monster she had imagined. He had been a desperate young man caught between loyalty and survival, making a choice that had haunted him for years. The guilt in his eyes during the charity speech, the way he talked about creating opportunities for others, it was all connected to what he had done to her father. Working late again? Emma spun around to find Nathaniel standing in the doorway, his tie loosened and his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked tired, older than his 31 years, and for a moment Emma saw the young man who had once worshipped her father. Just finishing up the projections, she said, quickly minimizing the files on her screen. I didn't expect anyone else to be here. I rarely leave before midnight, Nathaniel admitted, moving to the window that overlooked the glittering city. Old habits from the early days, when it was just me and a handful of employees, working 18-hour days. It must be lonely at the top, Emma found herself saying. The words slipping out before she could stop them, Nathaniel turned to look at her. Something vulnerable flickering in his expression. Sometimes, success has a way of isolating you from the people who knew you before you became successful. Emma's heart pounded as she realized this was her moment. The perfect opening to reveal who she was, to confront him with his sins and watch his world crumble. Instead, she heard herself ask, do you ever regret the choices you made getting here? The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. When Nathaniel finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Every day. There are things I've done, people I've hurt, that I can never take back. I tell myself it was necessary, that I had no choice, but guilt is a funny thing. Doesn't care about your justifications. Emma stood slowly, her plan unraveling with each word. This wasn't the man she'd expected to find. This was someone as broken and haunted as she was, carrying his own burden of loss and regret. What if those people could forgive you? She asked, stepping closer. What if they understood that sometimes we're all just trying to survive? Nathaniel's eyes met hers, and Emma felt the dangerous pull of connection, of two damaged souls recognizing each other across the darkness. Some things can't be forgiven, Emma. Some betrayals cut too deep. The way he said her name sent a shiver through her entire body. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin through the cotton shirt. Maybe, she whispered, but maybe forgiveness isn't about them. Maybe it's about us learning to live with what we've done. For a moment, they stood frozen in that space between hatred and understanding, revenge and redemption. Then Nathaniel's phone buzzed, breaking the spell as he read the message. His expression shifted from vulnerable to concerned to something that looked like fear. I have to go, he said abruptly. There's been a security breach. Someone's been accessing confidential files? Emma's blood turned to ice as she watched him stride toward the elevators, already barking orders into his phone. Her computer screen still glowed behind her. The minimized files, a digital time bomb waiting to explode. She had perhaps an hour before the security. The team traced the breach back to her workstation. 1 hour to decide whether to run or to stay, and face the consequences of a plan that had become something far more complicated than revenge. 1 hour to choose between the girl, who had died with her father, and the woman who might learn to love again. Emma didn't run. Instead, she sat in her apartment through the night, waiting for the knock that would change everything. At 6:47 a.m. it came. It's not the police, not security guards, but Nathaniel himself, standing in her doorway with eyes that held no warmth, no trace of the vulnerability she had glimpsed the night before. May I come in? His voice was polite, controlled, deadly. Emma stepped aside, her heart hammering against her ribs as he entered her small space. In the morning light streaming through her cracked windows, the distance between their worlds had never been more apparent. You're very good, Nathaniel said, settling into her threadbare armchair as if he owned it. Emma Chen, mathematics and finance from Berkeley. 7 years at Morrison and Associates. Exceptional analytical skills and a talent for remaining invisible. Emma remained standing, her back against the door. What do you want, Nathaniel? The truth. Starting with who you really are. I've never lied to you about who I am. Nathaniel pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photograph. Emma's breath caught as she recognized her father's face. 20 years younger, standing beside a beaming young man with Nathaniel's eyes. David Chen, brilliant mathematician, former Berkeley professor, and my first business partner. He died 3 years ago of a heart attack brought on by financial stress and untreated medical conditions. Nathaniel's gaze never left Emma's face. He also had a daughter, Emma Chen, who disappeared after his funeral and has been planning something. For a very long time, Emma felt the last of her masks crumbling away. Remembered, I never forgot. Your father talked about you constantly in the early days. His brilliant daughter, the one who inherited his mind for numbers and patterns. He was so proud of. You. Nathaniel's voice softened slightly. He would have been devastated to know what you've become. The words hit Emma like physical blows. Don't you dare talk about what my father would have wanted. You killed him. No, Nathaniel said quietly. I failed him. There's a difference, though. I'm not sure it matters anymore. Emma moved away from the door, anger burning through her carefully constructed composure. You destroyed him. You took his life's work and threw him away like garbage when he got sick. I was 23 years old and terrified, Nathaniel replied, his own control beginning to crack. The investors were pulling out, the board was demanding changes, and I had 200 employees depending on me. Your father was dying, Emma. Even if I had kept him as partner, he couldn't have worked. So you stole everything from him. I saved what we built together. And I made sure he had the best medical care money could buy, even after the partnership ended. I paid for his treatments, his medications, his mortgage. The checks came from a shell company because I knew he wouldn't accept help from me directly. Emma stared at him, the revelation hitting her like a physical blow. You're lying. Nathaniel pulled out another document, a bank statement showing monthly payments to David Chen's accounts. Payments that had continued until the day her father died. He never told you, did he? He let you believe I had abandoned him completely because he was too proud to admit he was still taking help from the man he felt had betrayed him. Emma sank onto her small couch, the weight of 7 years of hatred suddenly unbearable. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I hoped you would realize on your own that revenge wouldn't bring him back, because I thought if you got to. Know me, you might understand that sometimes good people make terrible choices and have to live with the consequences. I accessed your files, Emma whispered. I read everything. I know. I've known since the second week you started working. For me, did you really think I wouldn't recognize David Chen's daughter? Did you think I wouldn't be watching for exactly this kind of approach? Emma felt the room spinning around her. If you knew, why did you let me stay? Why did you offer me the job? Nathaniel was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Because I owed your father a debt I could never repay, and maybe helping his daughter was a way to start. Because you're brilliant and talented, and you deserved a chance to build something instead of tearing things down. And because he stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. Because what? Emma demanded. Because I was falling in love with you, and I hoped that maybe, eventually, you might be able to love me back. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and vulnerable and completely devastating. Emma felt tears she hadn't allowed herself to shed in years burning behind her eyes. I came here to destroy you, she said. I know. I wanted to watch you lose everything. The way my father did. I know that too. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the monster she had constructed in her mind, but a man as broken and guilty as she was. A man who had made terrible choices and spent years trying to atone for them. A man who had fallen in love with his enemy and trusted her with the power to destroy him. What happens now? She asked. Nathaniel stood slowly, his expression shifting back to the controlled mask she had learned to recognize. Now you have a choice to make. I've already drafted your termination letter and prepared a severance package that should give you enough money to start over somewhere else? Or ... or what? Or you stay. You help me finish what your father and I started together. You help me build something worthy of his memory instead of tearing down what we created. Emma stared at him, seeing the trap within the offer. Do you think I can just forget everything? Forgive and move on? I think you're tired of carrying your father's pain along with your own. I think you're as lonely as I am, and maybe we could figure out how to be less lonely together. He moved toward the door, then stopped and turned back to her. There's one more thing you should know, Emma. Your father's algorithm, the one that built Hayes Technologies. I never used it. It's been sitting in a vault for 8 years because I couldn't bear to profit from something that cost me the best friend I ever had. Everything we've built since then has been original work. Emma felt the last pillar of her hatred crumble. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. All of it. Even the parts that don't fit the story you've been telling yourself. After he left, Emma sat in her empty apartment, surrounded by the wreckage of 7 years of planning. The man she had sworn to destroy had just handed her the weapon she needed to complete her revenge, and all she felt was hollow. Outside her window, San Francisco bustled with morning life. People rushing to jobs and dreams and the endless pursuit of something better. Emma Chen had a choice to make, and for the first time in years she had no idea what the right answer was. The only thing she knew for certain was that the girl who had started this journey was gone forever, and the woman who remained would have to decide who she wanted to become. Emma returned to Hayes Technologies the next morning, but not with the answer Nathaniel expected. She found him in his office, staring out at the San Francisco Bay, as if searching for answers in the gray morning fog. He turned when she entered, hope and wariness warring in his expression. I'm not here to forgive you, Emma said without preamble. And I'm not here for redemption or second chances or any of the pretty words you offered yesterday. Nathaniel's face went carefully blank. Then why are you here? Because there's something you don't know about my father's death. Something I never told anyone. Emma reached into her purse and pulled out a small recorder, placing it on his desk between them. The device was old, scratched, her father's initials still visible on the silver casing. David Chen didn't just have a heart attack. Nathaniel, he took pills, enough to stop his pain forever. But before he did, he made this recording. Nathaniel stared at the recorder as if it were a loaded gun. Emma, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her finger hovered over the play button. Because for 7 years, I've blamed you for his death. I built my entire identity around hating you for what you took from him. But the truth is more complicated than that. She pressed play, and her father's voice filled the office. Weak but clear, Emma. If you're listening to this, then I'm gone, and you're probably very angry. Angry at the cancer? Angry at the world? Angry at Nathaniel Hayes? Don't be angry at Nathaniel, sweetheart. He was trying to save what we built together, and I put him in an impossible position. I was dying, Emma, even if he had kept me as partner. I couldn't have helped him fight off the investors who wanted to tear our company apart. Emma watched Nathaniel's face crumble as her father continued. The truth is, I was relieved when he bought me out, relieved that the burden was his alone. I took the easy way out, and I let him become the villain in a story where we were all just trying to survive. I've been taking money from him for 3 years, Emma. He's been paying for everything. My medical bills, the house, your college loans. He never abandoned me. I just couldn't face him anymore because seeing him reminded me of who I used to be before the sickness took everything. The recording crackled with static before her father's voice returned, heavier now with the weight of approaching death. I know you'll want someone to blame when I'm gone. Don't blame Nathaniel. Don't blame yourself. Sometimes life is just cruel, and we do the best we can with the choices we're given. I love you, sweetheart. Build something beautiful with your life. Don't waste it on revenge. The silence that followed was deafening. Emma watched tears stream down Nathaniel's face. It's the first genuine emotion she had seen from him since the night they had almost connected. Why are you showing me this? He whispered. Because I realized something yesterday. I didn't come here to destroy you because you killed my father. I came here because I needed someone to blame for the fact that he chose to leave me behind. I needed you to be the monster, so I didn't have to face the truth that sometimes the people we love make choices we can't understand or forgive. Emma moved around the desk, stopping just inches from where Nathaniel sat. But there's something else. Something my father never knew, and something you need to understand before we finish this. She reached into her purse again, this time pulling out a small vial filled with clear liquid. Nathaniel's eyes widened. Emma, what is that? Ricin, she said calmly. Extracted from castor beans using a chemistry set and a lot of patience. It's tasteless, odorless, and virtually undetectable until it's too late. I've been carrying it for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to slip it into your coffee. Nathaniel didn't move, didn't call for help, didn't show fear. He just looked at her with something that might have been understanding. Are you going to use it? Emma set the vial on his desk next to the recorder. That was the plan. Get close to you, make you trust me, then watch you die slowly while knowing exactly who had killed you and why. The perfect revenge for David Chen's brilliant daughter, and now? Emma was quiet for a long moment, staring at the 2 objects that represented the different paths her life could take. The recording that offered forgiveness and understanding. The poison that promised the completion of 7 years of hatred. I realized that my father was right about one thing. We do the best we can with the choices we're given. She picked up the vial, turning it slowly in the morning light. The question is, what choice am I going to make? Nathaniel reached across the space between them, his fingers covering hers on the vial. Emma, you don't have to decide today. We can work through this together. I can help you know, Emma said, pulling her hand away. You've done enough. It's for my father, for me, for everyone who's been hurt by the choices we've all made. This is my decision to make. She walked to the window, looking out at the city where she had spent 7 years planning murder and discovered love instead. Below them, people moved through their lives, unaware of the life and death drama playing out 42 floors above them. I used to think that justice meant making you pay for what you did to my father. Then I thought it meant understanding. That sometimes good people make terrible choices. But maybe justice is simpler than that. Emma turned back to Nathaniel, her decision clear in her eyes. Maybe justice is choosing to break the cycle, choosing to build something instead of tearing it down. Choosing love over revenge, even when revenge would be easier. She walked back to his desk and picked up the vial of poison. Without hesitation, she opened the window and poured the clear liquid onto the wind, watching it disappear into the sand. Francisco morning. My father was wrong about one thing, she said, closing the window. Some things can be forgiven. Some people can change. Some stories can have endings that don't involve someone dying alone and broken. Nathaniel stood slowly, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. Does this mean you're staying? Emma smiled. The first real smile she had allowed herself in 7 years. It means I'm ready to start over. With you, with Hayes Technologies, with the life my father wanted me to build instead of the revenge I thought I needed. And us? Nathaniel asked, moving closer. Is there an us in this new life you're building? Emma reached up and touched his face, feeling the stubble on his jaw, the warmth of skin that was finally truly alive to her. Ask me in a year, she said. When we've both learned how to live with the choices we've made and the people we've decided to become. As Nathaniel leaned down to kiss her, Emma felt the weight of 7 years of hatred finally lift from her shoulders. Outside, San Francisco sparkled in the morning sun. And for the first time since her father's death, Emma Chen allowed herself to believe in second chances. The kiss was soft, tentative, filled with the promise of healing rather than the fire of passion. It tasted of forgiveness and new beginnings, of two broken people choosing to be whole together rather than destroying each other in their pain. When they broke apart, Emma rested her forehead against Nathaniel's, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with the salt air from the bay. We're going to have to learn how to trust each other, she whispered. Day? I know, he replied. And it's going to be hard. There will be days when you remember why you wanted to kill me, and days when I wonder if you still do. Emma pulled back to look at him, seeing not the enemy she had constructed, but the man who had loved her father, who had carried his guilt. For 8 years, who had fallen in love with the daughter of the friend he had failed. Then we'll take those days one at a time, she said. We'll choose each other over and over again, until it becomes as natural as breathing. 6 months. Later, Emma stood in the same ballroom where she had first spoken to Nathaniel Hayes as his enemy. Now she stood beside him as his partner, both in business and in the complicated dance of learning to love, someone you once planned to destroy. The Riverside Foundation was announcing its new technology scholarship program, funded entirely by Hayes Technologies and administered by the David Chen Memorial Trust. Emma watched as young faces lit up with the same hunger for knowledge that had once driven her father. And she knew he would have been proud. Any regrets? Nathaniel asked, his hand finding hers as they watched the scholarship recipients receive their awards. Emma thought about the girl she had been, consumed by hatred and planning murder. She thought about the vial of poison that now existed only in her memory, and the recorder that sat in her apartment as a reminder of the father who had loved her enough to save her from her own revenge. Only one, she said. That it took me so long to realize that the best way to honor my father's memory wasn't to destroy the man who hurt him, but to finish the work they started together. Nathaniel squeezed her hand, and Emma felt the last. Ghosts of her past finally laid to rest. They had both made terrible choices, both carried unbearable guilt. Both learned that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is choose love over justice. In the end, Emma Chen had gotten her revenge. After all, just not the kind she had planned. She had destroyed the man who had failed her, father, and helped build something better in his place. She had killed the girl who had died with David Chen and given birth to a woman who could love without conditions, trust without guarantees, forgive without forgetting. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave, Emma caught her reflection in the ballroom's mirrored walls. The woman looking back at her was someone her father would have recognized. would have been proud of. Someone who had chosen to build rather than destroy, to heal rather than harm. Someone who had learned that the most powerful weapon against darkness is not more darkness, but the simple, revolutionary act of choosing light. The end asterisk, like if. You enjoyed this twisted tale? Subscribe for more intense stories. Comment your thoughts on the ending. Share with someone who loves dark romance.